Welcome to the first Heels Google Plus Hangout on-air panel discussion. I'm Carmel Allen. I'm the brand ambassador of Heels and I'll be moderating the discussion. On the panel today, we have Willian Warren, a designer and lecturer at the CAS. We also have Morgan Hamilton Griffin, co-founder of the Style Bible, The Holborn. Then to my left, we have Terence Woodgate, the furniture designer, and Michelle Alger, who's the head of home at Heels. Joining us on the Hangout, we have Jay and Jade Blades from Out of the Dark. That's the charity that helps troubled young people learn furniture trades. And we also have David Steiner, a recent graduate from the Royal College of Art, who's working on a new furniture startup company launching later this year. And finally, we have design enthusiasts, Kate and Alice, who will also be joining in today's discussion. The topic is the best route to becoming a designer, and we want to know your opinion too. So get involved today by using the hashtag HeelsDiscuss on Google Plus and Twitter. I'll be reading out your comments and thoughts throughout the Hangout. So let's start with our first topic, the rounded individual. Let me begin with you, Terence. What do you think makes a great designer? Is it a rounded individual?
I don't know if it's a rounded individual. I think it's someone that needs to be open, certainly to expose themselves to as much design as possible, as much work as possible. I mean, work is the most important thing to study.
Okay. William, when you're at the CAS, how do you spot a great design, a great designer?
I think we should be careful with the words great design because it can often mean styled, heavily styled objects. And I think good design is when an object fits the brief and fits the context it's been designed for. So.
Michelle, when you're looking at designers and their work, what springs out to you? When can you spot a great design just by looking?
Well, I agree with William. When I'm looking for great design, I'm looking for an antique of the future, so something that will really stand the test of time and won't just be a trend.
Can I put that to Jade as well, please? When you're working with the young designers, or rather young people who are working in the furniture trade, can you spot a great designer coming through?
Not initially. We have to train them quite a while for them to actually become more comfortable with being creative, and then slowly they start to shine and slowly show an interest in design and the concept of becoming a designer.
Okay. Can I ask, I've got one here from Hayley Atkins. How important is the idea compared to the execution of the product? Can I put that to you, Terence?
Yeah, the idea really is fundamental to the piece, how it's going to end up. I think a lot of my work is either commission design or non-commissioned. You know, in fact, it's a speculative piece where I actually get the idea. Maybe I'm frustrated. I can't find something myself that does the job, and that's the initial idea. So the idea's got to come first, no doubt about it.
Okay. Can I go to Kate now? I believe you've got a question for the panel.
Yeah, I do. I'm a travel writer and blogger by profession, and I travel all over the world, and I see loads of different inspiration for design. And I'm just wondering how a designer these days can cut through all that external information and find their own design voice.
Can I ask you, William? How do you cut through all the noise and find your voice?
As a designer myself, I think I fit my designs to each brief and each project as they come up. So I would like to think that I'm a bit of a chameleon and I can be concept heavy on one design or production heavy on another design. I think you just need to be aware of what it is you're being asked to do.
I've got another question coming up now from Twitter, from Kylie. Are there any new materials young designers should be getting familiar with to be one step ahead of the rest? Can I put that question to David, our young designer from the Royal College of Art?
That's a very difficult question, actually. I think there are always new materials coming out, and it's very difficult to stay on top of all of them. But there are some really good material libraries you can go to in London and at universities where you can visit and have a look at things that you really wouldn't have known about any other way.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And Terence, I mean, you're an established designer. Are you constantly looking at new materials too?
Oh, most definitely. But you should never sort of overlook some of the most beautiful natural materials. I think that you've really got to get to grips with the materials. You've really got to understand them. You've got to hold them, stress them, break them, work them. I think it's very, very important to understand your materials. If you don't understand the materials, you can't create something really, really fantastic. And neither should you be fearful of failure. I mean, every prototype is on the route to potentially a great design.
Thanks. Should we move on to our second topic, the power of apprenticeship? The government is now giving student loans for apprenticeships, and there's even an apprenticeship week each March to promote them. But apprenticeships still aren't seen by most people as prestigious as a degree from a top university. Can I give that question to Jade? We've got some of your furniture here from your workshops, and I know that you promote apprenticeships and develop young people. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts on apprenticeship is basically young people we tend to work with, it's more to deal with their life skills, so getting them able to see that education is a viable option or employment is a viable option. Some young people we tend to work with sometimes second, third generation of unemployed, so they don't really see the importance of it. So the apprenticeship side of things is just getting them used to design, getting them used to furniture, getting them used to selling things, and then hopefully they will go into education or go into employment.
Willian, have you ever had someone who's come from an apprenticeship and then on to the CAS?
Yeah, there are people who come with different experience. Some people have done training in construction, woodwork, building work, and they're looking for more design skills. And the other way, conversely, lots of people come as designers but need to understand materials and process. So it's our job as lecturers to make sure that we give people a real experience, as live an experience as possible. So we run live projects with companies like Heels. This year we've run a live project with you, and we also, I myself am a practicing designer, and a lot of lecturers are practicing designers currently, and I think that gives students a very good understanding of how the industry works, a bit like an apprenticeship would.
Are you an apprentice? If you want to join the discussion, go to #HeelsDiscuss on google.com and Heels, and let's go to Alice. I believe you've got a question for the panel.
Yes, hi. I was just wondering, do furniture designers ever kind of cross over to become artists in their own right, or do they generally tend to just stay as furniture designers?
Let me put this to Terence. You're a furniture designer?
Yeah, I'm certainly not an artist. Yeah, I mean, design, I think the definition of design is, for me, is a fusion between art and technology, and design can be inspired either purely by art, by culture, or by technology. By, you know, I can have a design inspired by looking at a connection or a pop rivet, anything as simple as that. I think there's a number of artists who have become furniture designers. I mean, thinking of the work of Donald Judd, and there's lots of people who trained as sculptors and became furniture designers. I don't know so much the other way around. I can't. No one comes to mind. Perhaps.
Thinking of William Morris.
Yeah, William Morris. But anything contemporary? Anything from our generation?
I think there are examples of furniture designers who have are concept heavy in their work, and I think that they're becoming more. The boundaries are blurring, they're becoming more like artists. Although I think that maybe the question belies a little bit of hierarchy, which is, would a designer become an artist in their own right? I don't see that there's one being better than the other. I think that maybe each should be valued on their own credits.
Well, we've got a question here from Green Tea Architects. Should we specialise in one material, become an artisan of one?
Oh, no.
No. Well, it's useful, isn't it, to have a great depth of knowledge on one material. I think is valuable. But if everyone was to do that, then you'd miss out on a lot of interesting crossovers.
Yeah, I would do the best to avoid any manifesto where you're going to sort of, the Italians do that. They write a manifesto, then they create the work, and I don't think that's the right way around. I think you've got to be flexible.
Can I just put that to Jade and Jay? I think you work mostly with wood, don't you?
Yes, we work with wood mainly, old wood, old furniture.
Okay. Can I also ask David that? You believe in specialising in one material? What's your favourite?
I think I agree with the others. Of course, it's great to be a specialist in one thing, but I think you should aspire to be a specialist in many different materials. And I think I've also discovered recently lots of new sort of materials and processes, and I think the more the better, really.
Thanks, David.
There is crossover for this stuff, you see. If you understand rotational moulding, you might also therefore understand casting in chocolate. And so it's not some of those crossovers are inspirational and might not seem obvious to begin with, but having a breadth of knowledge in materials and processes really gives you wings.
That's quite interesting, because I know, Michelle, you buy the chocolates in the store, but you also buy ceramics and fabrics and lots of other things as well. So do you get excited by material?
I do. Material for me is almost the first thing I look at. Material and colour are for me the most important first elements that I'm drawn to a product.
I keep thinking of chocolate as a material now. I mean, I want to make something out of chocolate.
I do think it's important that the kind of material reflects the design. So understanding that material is very important. I recently interviewed Sebastian Cox, and the way he designs around his coppiced hazel as an environmental product is really fascinating, the way it comes out in the design. But that kind of knowledge and that concept is so easily then transferable into different materials.
So letting the material sing.
Yeah, I guess because his work is so organic, the materials have to almost dictate the design in some respects.
I'm going to move on now to the third topic. About qualifications and whether a first-class degree guarantees career success. Michelle, you're meeting designers all the time, and I know you do open days with designers as well. When they come to you showing a new product, do you ever ask where they're studying or what grade they got in their degree?
I always ask where they've studied, and I love to know their background. I love to know what journey they've been on to get to where they are now. But in terms of asking for the results, the grades, that really doesn't bear any interest to me.
Let me ask that to David. You've just qualified from the Royal College of Art. What did you get?
Well, at the Royal College of Art, they really don't focus on grades very much at all, actually. In fact, we don't get a final grade whatsoever. We just get told that whether we've passed or, well, hopefully passed. And I think that it speaks about you really getting the most out of it for yourself. And it's all down to you and having that motivation and what you get out of it and where you go afterwards. What you've got for your portfolio is really the main thing.
Can I ask you this, Terence, as well? Because I believe you didn't go to university, and yet you're one of our most well-known designers, aren't you, in the UK?
No, it's bizarre, really. I've been a visiting lecturer at the Royal College, and I don't think it really is terribly important. I mean, that grade is really quite subjective. I mean, I can look at work and I can think it's fantastic if it's modernist and it fits into the way I like to design, but it'd be very, very difficult for me to judge much more, say, organic design or something weaved out of yogurt. I couldn't do that, so it doesn't matter.
I've got a question here from Google Plus from Mike Brooks. How true is that in the design industry you are only as good as your last job? I'm going to ask you that, Morgan. You're interviewing lots of designers for the Holborn. Do you judge them on their last job?
Definitely not. I think it's about, it always has to come back to the things they're producing and looking at, because their work good work should be timeless, and it should last, and it should have that kind of timeless feel to it, and that kind of stays true whether or not that was designed 10, 20 years ago. And I think you've always got to come back to the individual items.
Talking of your last job or different parts in your career, William, are there products or parts of your career where you thought, well, I'm not so keen on that, or?
Yeah, we all grow up, don't we? We all change a bit, and I think I like to think of myself as a bit of a chameleon and answering the briefs as they come out, trying to fulfill each brief as it's there. And so, if you were to look across my breadth of work, and you'll see many different projects, but I think really you should be judged on all of it rather than on individual pieces.
Okay, would you agree with that?
I do, but there's not enough experimentation. I don't, I think it's, we seem to be quite fearful of failure. That's one of the things, and our society is almost stigmatized by that, by fear of failure. And I don't think we can create really great, innovative, fresh design unless we are prepared to fail.
Is that a problem with kind of judging people on whether or not they got a first or a second or whatever at university, that sometimes being experimental and controversial, which doesn't necessarily fit the profile of your lecturer, is a good thing, and therefore judging people on the grade is not necessarily the best way to get innovative kind of work?
I think you've got to judge the work. It's the work. It's not, work comes forward more than anything else.
Let me ask Michelle on this, because you're looking at the work, you choose a piece because you think that work's fantastic, and then you put it into the shop and it doesn't sell. Do you then judge that designer and you don't buy them again or their next product? Do you feel all the tide's turned against them and customers aren't interested?
No, not necessarily. I think it almost has to be right place, right time. It could be a fantastic design, and I could feel that it's right for Heels, but we might be 18 months too early for the customer to engage with it.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Now, I think it's interesting that Tom Dixon, one of our most well-known designers as well in the UK today, he is completely self-taught in design, has no design background. Morgan, do you come across lots of designers and producers who've got no formal background in design?
Yeah, we have interviewed a number who haven't had any kind of formal training. I'd say that the majority have been through that university process, and a number of them credit that as a really important phase, others don't. So there is this kind of mix, and university is important for a lot of people, but not for all.
Okay. Jade, did you have a formal design background?
Yes, I actually studied textile design at university.
Okay, how did you make the transition then from textiles to furniture?
Well, I kind of came away from textiles for a while, setting up youth projects with Jade, and then came back into it through Out of the Dark. Well, not textiles, but design as such. So I'm not fully using my textiles background, but it's coming into it with the upholstery and ideas.
You are using it. We get to use loads of different fabrics, and we're working with some new designers for Designers Block. In London in the London Fashion Festival, London Design Festival. There you go. That we're creating some new fabrics, new designs of some chairs. It's just going to look amazing. So that's your background as well. Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you that's come from Google Plus Fashion Forecast. They're saying, is it possible to make a mistake when you design, or is it an important part of experimenting, part of the process of experimenting? You're working there with lots of young people. Their experimentation, or is it process, or is it design?
For us, it's more about experimentation with ideas and seeing how it works. We also have quite a lot of interns who are either still university students or they're graduates, and some of the graduates actually haven't had a very great degree experience, but they come to us, and because we're not, we're still quite a young organisation, young company, it's a bit more, I guess, it relaxes the right word, and we do a lot of experimentation with their ideas, get the young people learning from them as well, and then choose what works best. We think what works best.
Okay, let me move on to our final topic. Can technology make everyone a designer? Morgan, what are your thoughts on this? I know we had a chat earlier about it.
Just because you have it, it doesn't make you a designer. I'm a writer. Just because I use Microsoft Word and I got that technology, it doesn't make me the next George Orwell. Technology it changes a lot of it, but in the end, kind of talent is talent. Lots of us have got iPads, but we couldn't have done what David Hockney did on his exhibition. So technology changes things, but in the end, it always comes back to the idea.
David, can I bring you into this discussion? Because I know you have some thoughts on technology and how it's helped you as a designer in your education.
Well, I think technology is moving on so fast, and it's such an amazing tool, all the new internet-based and digital manufacturing things that we have available, that it would be silly to ignore them. And I don't think they should replace more traditional methods of design and manufacture, but there's certainly an amazing amount of things that you can do with them that we have to engage with if we're going to sort of stay with the pace of design.
Mm-hmm. I've got a question here from Google+. Can you still become a designer if you can't draw? Now, let me ask both William and Terence this one.
Definitely. I can't draw. I'm not a good drawer at all. And I use technology to draw with. I mean, I would rather spend hours on a computer and create a photorealistic rendering than try and show someone my drawings. I hide behind the technology.
Oh.
No, I'm the opposite. I draw all the time, pencil on paper. But you don't need to be an expert draftsman, I think, to draw. I think you need to get ideas out of your head and onto paper. As soon as they're out of your head and on paper, you can value them yourself. They're not in this imagination mist which is still in your head. You can get it out, put it on paper, put the next idea on paper. You can come back and look at what you've been doing, and ideas will develop that way through sketching.
It's all, you're having a conversation with yourself, really, aren't you? When you're sketching, it's a dialogue. I mean, and Bob Dylan said that when he writes a song, he vomits words on a page, and I think it's pretty well what a designer does as well. You're putting shapes and forms, and eventually something starts to talk to you. Some essential character of that drawing starts to come out, and that's the benefit of drawing. I think just talking to yourself.
Yeah, and the good stuff will bob to the top.
Yeah. Talking to yourself without getting put away.
Michelle, do you draw? Are you interested when you're talking to designers? Do you look at their sketchbooks?
I think often the sketchbooks are more interesting than the finished pieces. I think that technology can help and hinder at the same time. I think that for some designers, like you, Terence, of course, it can make some designers a little bit lazy, especially when you're talking about textiles and a repeat pattern. It's very easy to do a repeat pattern on CAD, but actually to make a repeat pattern really work, you should draw it by hand.
Mm-hmm. Jade and Jay, are you embracing technology within Out of the Dark?
Cool. The technology, not so much on my side. I work down in the workshop with the young people, and what I normally, the most technological bit that we have is whether to use horsehair or foam in upholstering a chair. But yeah, I don't, but I think you
Interestingly, I run kind of the business side, the creative side, and we've started using it more in my area, especially with trying to show customers in the sales and marketing side, trying to show customers what we're planning to do, what their pieces might look like. So we've got a couple of young people who are actually learning how to use CAD and use some other kind of rendering programs, and so ones who are not good with their hands can then come and use the computers and get involved creatively like that.
Thank you. I've got a question here on Twitter from Sarah. Do you think 3D printing will change the way people design? Can I ask you, Morgan, have you been seeing a lot of 3D printing going on?
I haven't actually yet interviewed anyone who's using 3D printing, but I hear a lot about it, and it's a really exciting development. And I think it will affect the way people design in some ways, but you know, all the other big technological jumps have happened over the years, from radio to TV. It hasn't necessarily kind of changed the principles at play. So it'll be another kind of tool for us to use, and it's exciting, but I don't think it will fundamentally change the landscape.
I saw some 3D printing of chocolate, actually, which I thought was fantastic. But most of the other stuff I've seen has been rather unattractive jewellery.
Well, it's in its infancy, I think, all of that technology, and we're only just learning how it works and where to apply it. So, yeah, it'll come in its own, I think, quite soon.
I'd like to ask everyone who's taken part today if we can just finish by asking each of them and every one of them a word of advice for designers. So can I start with you, David? What advice would you like to give designers starting out today?
Yeah, I would say only really go into a career in design if you're really, really motivated, and you've got to dedicate your time and yourself to the subject. It's something you end up thinking about all the time, whatever you're doing. So you've got to be prepared for that commitment, and just really that passion comes through in your work if you really throw yourself into it.
William?
Keep drawing, keep making and learning about how things are made, and look at the world around you and what you admire in it and like in its design, and justify that, explain why you like it to yourself.
Michelle?
Take on board every bit of advice or criticism you're given. That's the most important learning curve, I think, for a designer.
And Morgan?
I'd say stay true to yourself and stay true to your kind of principles of design and production.
Jade? Jay?
I'd say don't worry too much. Just let go and keep on designing.
Just be confident, I would say. Be confident in what you've done, and try to do as much collaborations as you possibly can with people in your university or people that you meet. If you haven't gone to university, just try and work with other people.
And Terence?
Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. Just be confident and don't give up.
Okay, so on that note, we're going to close the Hangout, but we'll be carrying on at Google Plus page, the Heels Google Plus page. So come and say hello at google.com/+heels. But thank you again to everyone for joining us on the Hangout.